Welcome to TASCTV. My name is Gunay Evinch. I co-chair the Turkish American National Steering Committee. TASC is based in Washington, D.C., and we serve the entire Turkish American community from coast to coast. Today I have a beautiful program with my own delegates from District 15 in Maryland. I'd like to welcome Senator Brian Feldman, Delegate Lily Chi, Delegate Kathleen Dumais, and Delegate David Fraser-Hidalgo. Welcome, everyone. What I would like to do is we will unmute ourselves when we speak. I'll start with Senator Feldman, please. Senator Feldman, I want to thank Andrew from your office for coordinating this effort, bringing four legislators at the state level together for our program. Also want to thank Frederica from your office for facilitating all the citations that acknowledge Turkish heritage of Maryland.
Well, it's great for us to be here, and we love doing a little international TV, if you will. You know, just to give you a little context, Delegate Chi, who's on the call here, is our first Chinese-born state legislator in the history of Maryland, and Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo was born in Ecuador, first Ecuadorian-born legislator. Prior cycle, we had Aruna Miller, was the first Indian-born state legislator in the history of our state. So I think we pride ourselves on being the legislative team for the state of Maryland that is international in flavor and feel, and we've got immigrants as part of our team. So, but thanks for the invite. This is great.
Thank you, thank you. Delegate Chi, how did you become interested in public service and also finally becoming a state delegate in Maryland?
Well, thank you so much, Gunay, for having us. As our senator put so beautifully, we represent a very globally diverse district in Montgomery County, which itself is made of 1/3 immigrants today from all over the world. And I think my desire for public service came from the fact that I felt I needed a stronger sense of belonging in this place that I chose to call home. And I'm also beyond grateful for everything this country and this community has given me. I grew up in an entirely different culture and political system. I also feel very strongly that a perspective like mine needs to be represented at the table. And I wanted to be an example of paying back and paying forward. So it was not because all of a sudden I woke up one day, I decided to get into politics. It was because I got involved in the community and I got to know the people from all over the world, including Turkish Americans who I worked very closely because I actually had a chance to visit Turkey almost a decade ago. And I was blown away by the energy and the vitality of people there. And I even said, wow, people here look like they're from Montgomery County. You know, this is who we are as a community. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Delegate Dumais, how did you become interested in public service and your service in the county as well as the district is very well known and you're very respected. So let us know how you became interested in your background too. America, as we can all agree, is a nation that represents solidarity and diversity.
Absolutely does. I actually got involved or decided that I would like to be involved in state politics when I was a senior in high school. There's a program in the Maryland House of Delegates where as a high school senior, you can be what's called a page, which to be honest is really a gopher. But you sit on the floor of the House of Delegates and for 2 weeks during your senior year have an opportunity to sit in on bill hearings. And I really got hooked on state government at that point, because that's really where the action is from the perspective of how can I affect my community? And it is those state and local laws that I think are incredibly important. So I'm a practicing attorney, and Brian Feldman and I, Senator Feldman and I, ran together for the first time in 2002. At the time, there were 2 open delegate seats in our district, and we both took that shot and were fortunate enough to be elected. I've always been very involved in my community, whether through legal bar associations or, other sort of community associations. And, I like to think I can give back. My father was a principal of a high school in Montgomery County, and he always said that it was important to do the right thing and to change your little corner of the world. And so he's kind of always sitting on my shoulder, and that's the reason that I initially got involved and have been in since, like I said, it's amazing. Brian and I just finished our 19th session. I don't know where the years went, but thank you also for having us, and we look forward to further discussion this afternoon.
God bless you. God bless your dad. Person by person, one by one. David, Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo, you're Ecuadorian American. How did you become interested and as particularly ran for office and were elected?
So first of all, thank you so much for having us. Again, what everybody else said, thank you. My dad was a federal employee, so he had always kind of given back and tried to be a public servant. And my mother was from Ecuador, and I was born in Ecuador and came to the United States when I was very young. And I, for the most part, grew up in Montgomery County, which, as Delegate Chi and everybody else has stated, is a very, very diverse community. That's just the way that I grew up in a very diverse community, and the way that I grew up as giving back. My parents always had people over. They always had people living with us whenever anybody needed help. So I think that, and I went into law enforcement in Montgomery County for several years, and then I took some time off, and I backpacked through Southeast Asia for a year. And that was extraordinarily illuminating for me as to just the diverse nature of our world. And when I came home, I did some odd jobs. I ran a tech company for a few years. And then my father, because I started getting more and more involved in local kind of public service and going to Annapolis and testifying on bills. And my father said, you should think about going onto the county council or becoming a state delegate. And I remember thinking, there is no way that I want to do that. And then a few years later, it just kind of fell upon me. And I've been in since 2013. And I love what I do. I love my team. We do such great work. And it's just it feels nice to be in a place in your life where you feel like this is where you're supposed to be, and giving back. So that's where I am. Thank you.
David, we're just finishing very sad moments of being stuck at home, protecting ourselves, protecting people around us, protecting our community from the COVID virus. That period seems to be ending. The masks are coming off. People are more engaged. So how would you say that this affected you as our leaders? I think there's, of course, the health aspect of this, but also I think there is the experience of it too. What did we learn about ourselves and our community, our nation?
So I would say there are a lot of lessons to be learned. One, that we are, as a society, much more vulnerable than I think anybody really realized, and much more vulnerable than we were prepared for. With that said, I think that we also were much more resilient than people thought we could be. And as a result of volunteering that was done all over the world, but specifically in Maryland and in District 15, an incredible amount of people stepped up and stepped forward to help those that were affected by the pandemic in a disproportionate fashion. Those that got sick, those that had food security issues, and I think we really saw the best of what we could be in that period of time. People were volunteering as best they could. They were making masks. They were volunteering for food banks and doing food deliveries. So I think there are a lot of lessons that we should hopefully be proud of, and some things that we can take forward to prepare for when this happens again. And invariably, I believe this is going to happen again, and hopefully the lessons that we've learned from this one will make us a little bit more prepared for next time.
Totally. From my perspective, it was an interesting opportunity presented to spend more time with family. Lily, how would you reflect on the COVID experience now? And are we ready to proceed, or should we still have caution? How much caution, maybe?
Well, I think it's a great question because there are many lessons we could learn from environment to public health to how we interact with one another and efficiency of operation for every sector. But a couple of lessons I reflected on very deeply because we had time to reflect on things was even for a community like Montgomery County, where we pride ourselves as the hub of life sciences center of the world, basically, right? We are the origin of many of the vaccine development, to be advanced by many of our great biotech companies and NIH and so forth. We still have a major challenge at local level in connecting our people in terms of access to healthcare. So, development of medicine and a cure is one thing, but public health is really a social justice issue, which is a policy issue that we care about. If someone is sick, no one is really safe. I think that's a big lesson we learned in terms of how to get more of our people vaccinated and having access to tests. So as policymakers, we all have to reflect on that. And the other thing that I have seen over the past year was, especially for Asian Americans, that what is global is local. Anything that happens with China, with our country of origin, immediately affects our well-being as American citizens, whether we like it or not, whether we have any control over these things or not, right? Just the fact that some people thought, there was something going on about the cover-up or whatever about origin of virus, immediately that became very nasty reactions toward Chinese Americans by some ill-informed Americans who were finding someone else to blame, and it was exacerbated by the former president of the United States, which was very unfortunate, using the kind of toxic rhetoric. So a major reflection point is we need to step up and step in to fight for our place in this country. I mean, racism is a bigger virus than a global pandemic, and all of us have a role to play to make sure that all Americans have our place in this country.
That takes me to the next question, unless Kathleen, Senator Feldman, you'd like to comment on COVID. What I did see in the COVID experience also, which is very disturbing, was the hatred that also evolved, the politics that made it very difficult for health access, right policy on how to address the matter, and how to get community consensus and engagement in fighting the virus. We're in a time now in the United States where we're very polarized, and there's hatred that is almost freely showing itself as if it's okay. And how do we go forward with this now? How do we improve upon this? President Biden went to Tulsa to talk about a massacre that maybe none of us ever learned in school, which raises a question: what are our schools not teaching us even today about what happened more recently? So, what would you, Senator Feldman, say about going forward with now and resolving this polarization and dealing with hatred issues?
Well, first of all, I did want to just make the point, because Delegate Chi, that I also, about a decade ago, spent about 10 days in Turkey. It was a great trip. I actually spent a fair amount of time in Ankara meeting with the politicians, and I learned a lot about the politics of Turkey, and I followed it ever since. I was there in 2011, so I just want to make that point. This issue of hate, Lily actually, dealt with some of it firsthand, even on the floor of our House of Delegates. We actually had some ugly stuff. I myself, for those, you may remember a couple of years ago in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm originally from, there was a shooting at a synagogue. The biggest mass murder of Jews in the history of the United States was at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. That was my home synagogue. I was actually bar mitzvahed at that very synagogue. And so, I don't think it's about education. I know that's part of it. I think we have to be very proactive. When a gentleman legislator has said some things on the floor of the House, Lily actually put to paper a letter or an op-ed she wrote attacking him directly. I mean, it was a proactive response. She didn't let it lie. She took action immediately, called him out in the press. And I think that you need to do that. And I also think there are organizations, I think this organization that's connect. There are groups that build bridges between groups, and I think that we need more of that. And again, education's part of it, but I think proactive building block organizations, along with immediate responses to call folks out when necessary. And so there's no easy answer to it. It's 2021. I thought we had moved beyond that with this kind of stuff, but we saw again firsthand in Annapolis and see it every day. So.
No, we would agree at TASC that regret for the past must be proactive for the future. Kathleen Dumais, please share your experience with how we're going to resolve hatred. And by the way, I would agree with the social justice approach on this.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of dealing with inequities, access, equality issues.
Can I, before Kathleen, can I also say this issue of what we learned? I mean, I have to just say that we have, and maybe that's part of the hatred thing. It was health disparities and access to health care. It was access to broadband. It was access to economic well-being. I mean, the disparities in the country, I think, were uncovered in a way a lot of us didn't see that underbelly of the United States. But at the same time, when, we were debating in Annapolis, people having unemployment insurance problems and not getting their benefits, and they're on the cusp of becoming homeless. We have record stock market, a housing boom in the real estate market. I mean, we had two Americas, and I think that fosters hate too. So when you talk about social justice, the economics and access and healthcare and broadband, all those things we saw in full bloom this year, while we're trying to come up with policies to sort of equal the playing field a bit, so that's a big part of it. I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Very well articulated, the dichotomy of sorts.
Right, and the dichotomy that we also see, particularly in education, really hits home, and I think is what makes such a huge difference. But we have to get to a place we think a bit outside of the box, and that we actually take into account the differences between the different socioeconomic groups and the geography or the demographics of the different areas, and make sure that everybody is getting, enough funds, which is what state government and certainly the federal government's about, is making sure that the funding is provided in such a way that we can address some of these gaps, whether it's the wealth gap or the education gap. And I think COVID had a lot to do with all of us, taking that step back and realizing that we are really sort of one human family, and that we really need to take all of that into account and really pay attention to those that are less fortunate than we are. I think those of us that, for whatever reason have, are comfortable, we need to become a bit uncomfortable and see what we can do to help those that are less fortunate. Some of the kinds of things that I've seen, and, certainly, as I said, I'm a practicing attorney, I'm very involved in the legal community. Well, the Montgomery County Bar Association established sort of a racial equity and, implicit bias committee that, sponsored a series of sessions where, we would read a number of articles, we would read books, and then we would all get together, and many times with, speakers that were, had done a great deal of the social science research on this. And, we get into our own little bubbles and our own little worlds, and we forget that we are part of this one big family, and that we really need to address those that are less fortunate. And that's, I think, something that I took away from COVID. We've certainly experienced here in the United States the Black Lives Matters movement. And that was certainly, eye-opening to many of us. Partly the problem I sort of am frustrated with is sort of the generalizations that are often made and the politics of it, where, I also serve as a mediator in my family law cases. And I look to try and find the solution and work through the issues. And sometimes in politics, we see that, particularly in Capitol Hill, but sometimes in our state government, it's very partisan. And we lose sight sometimes that we're trying to solve a problem. And it's not a question of which party has the better idea. It's a question of what's the best idea. And compromise is not a dirty word. And that we ought to be taking all of that into consideration as we, as policymakers, try to address making life better for our constituents and for the state. And those on Capitol Hill, I don't know that they'll ever figure it out, but I hope they do. So that's, that's sort of where I think the important piece is that we really have to get back to the place where we work together and find solutions.
Totally agree. It's like the Native American saying, in the web of life, one activity in one part of our cosmos affects everyone else on that web that's connected. Absolutely. And so full integration. And I would also agree, my daughter is taking a national, state, local government class. She's a sophomore at Churchill. And so they had an interesting question about what they call partition polarizations. And that is the politics of just going for that 1% that gets you over the 50%. Right. And that's all you need. And it is so counter compromise. It is so counter mainstream thinking. It is it's polarization. And there's a strategy behind it. Actual political strategists say this is the way we should do it. I don't think we should be listening to them. I think we got to be listening to the American heart. We are. Also in the world, I'm so glad you were, two of you, I believe, Lily and Brian went to Turkey. We should all go to Turkey.
I'd love to.
We got to think we'll all go together and we'll have a lot of fun. We learn a lot. It's a global, the world is so much more small. And there's so much good that people can do, people-to-people diplomacy. Then I find the delegation for District 15 a role model delegation. So with respect to bridge building during COVID, I would say that one thing we did as the Turkish American community at TASC is we fed people who were having food security issues. We fed about 80,000 families and with boxes of food. And from New Jersey down to Maryland, and also the homeless in Los Angeles. And we did this also during Ramadan, and this brings me to your point, Lily, about, and Kathleen, about feeling the lack of all the good things that we're used to. Putting ourselves in a position where people are starving, or don't have health insurance, or do not have health care, and cannot even get vaccinations maybe. So there, during Ramadan, when you fast from sunrise to sunset, you starve basically every day. You do this for 30 days. And then to give food during that time to people who need it, it really compounds the experience. So we're kind of proud about that, and we look forward to providing more food assistance to Marylanders. And I promised my board of directors yesterday that I would do that with my delegation if you're up to it. We have food boxes to deliver, and we will do that, and we will invite you. So with respect to Turkish Americans in Maryland, in DC area, we're about 25,000, and tell us about your experiences with the Turkish American community, and we like to get you more involved with the Turkish American community. One thing we do as a Turkish American community in Maryland is, for example, we work with the Jewish American community, and we did a Holocaust awareness program at the Baltimore History Museum. And we showed a program on called a documentary called not Passport. There was a documentary called Passport, but the documentary we showed was called Desperate Hours, and it was Turkish diplomats giving Turkish citizenship to the Jews of Europe. And once you got that citizenship, got that passport, the Nazis couldn't touch you. And so, tell us about your experiences, how we're going to follow up on that, and what you'd like to do.
Could I just jump in? So, and I saw her name actually on one of the emails setting this up, and I don't know if she's on the call. Oya Bain, is she a good friend of yours? So when I first, literally, I think she hosted an event for me my very first time I ran, and I forged, I think, a really nice relationship with her and a bunch of folks in her orbit. And I think, part of it is, and maybe you can be the facilitator, we actually had some issues in Annapolis dealing with, we have a State Department, but it's not like, foreign affairs. But we actually had some issues, where the Turkish government had a stake in things, and there were some resolutions. So there's a political angle, number one, but also I think there is a large Turkish population in our legislative district. And I think we could all, again, I started off early with the whole cadre of folks from the community, whether it was Oya and some of her friends, but and it's been a great experience. It was really, we haven't connected recently, but I'd like to reconnect. It would be great to reconnect because of this, this show we're doing today with folks, in District 15 specifically. And maybe this would be a good starting point to again reacquaint to some of my old friends I've lost a little touch with.
That'll be great. Actually, I'll host you all with a meeting, with a get-together, cocktail party with the Turkish American community of District 15.
Perfect. And, because, we're getting into election season. We can't meet enough people. Like, that's, the way our brains work. So, yeah, that would be ideal.
Yeah, that would be fun, too. And a lot of
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to say, let me just chime in to say in response to your question, I actually luckily did have some personal and professional experience working with the Turkish American community because I was Montgomery County's County Executives Community Liaison with Asian and the Middle Eastern communities. So I worked extensively for quite a few years with different communities and learned tremendously and how they learn to organize themselves and become a force for good. In fact, when I was staffing the county's Middle Eastern Advisory Group, we worked together to designate the month of Ramadan and having official iftar, breaking of bread for Montgomery County government so that we officially pay tribute and respect to our growing Muslim American community. And as an Asian American, as an immigrant, I often point to the larger Muslim community from many different ethnicities and countries and say, no matter what language they speak at the time of Ramadan and just throughout the year, I've seen so much good done by the Muslim community. So I'm just really proud. I think we can all cross-learn from each other, and that's the beauty of it. I often just use the Muslim community and Turkish community as an example of how we can grow up as a new community and contribute to the greater good. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you my great experience, and I still relish.
Thank you, Lily. Sounds beautiful. And Kathleen, I think you wanted to say something.
Just similar to Brian, when I was first elected in 2002, became acquainted with the community and have always appreciated the good work that the community does, and appreciate the fact that you invite us to join you. And even though sometimes the calendar may not allow it, I appreciate being informed, and I do try to participate when I can. And I would look forward to helping you hand out boxes of food. That would be wonderful.
Thank you, Kathleen. David, you went like this when I said cocktail party. So,
well, I have two kids, 12 and 13 years old, and I have been with them pretty much nonstop for the last 15 or 16 months, with the exception of session where I got out. And while I do love my kids dearly, and I really do, getting out of the house and seeing other people now that so many people are vaccinated, I think would be great and fun for me. And then one of the things that I kind of wanted to just circle back on a little bit, and that is what everybody's talking about, and I think it's really important that diversity is our strength, right? We're all, as far as what race we're concerned, none of what race we're concerned really matters. The point that's the most important point is that they're all part of the same race. It's called the human race. And the more that we engage with others, just the stronger that we become. So any and every time we get the opportunity to engage with people that we are maybe more unfamiliar with or we don't know as much about, these are great opportunities to expand your horizons. And I'm all in.
Yeah.
So
that's good. I'm going to wrap up. And before I do, first of all, I wanted to thank you all for this citation from the Assembly, Maryland Assembly. This celebrates the 102nd anniversary of Azerbaijan, and the Azerbaijan American community is commended in it. The Azerbaijan American community is a Turkic community. We speak a variation of Turkish, and sometimes we can understand each other. I can say most of the time we understand each other. And the second citation is Children's Day, the 23rd of April. This is very important to the Turkish American community across the border, both faith-based as well as less faith-based, or I can say secular. TASC represents both communities and bridges. So when we talk about Muslim Americans, for example, we're talking about non-practicing, kind of like myself, and then we have faith-based practicing, and we build bridges among the Turkish Muslims, or the Turkish American community, and then also with similar other communities, Pakistani, for example, Muslim communities. So I wanted to thank you for that. I will be organizing a get-together. Just did want to also commend Senator Feldman. This is a great program. I got this in the mail. It's about renewable energy. This is key for saving our Earth, little by little. Today there was bad news about Hoover Dam. The water levels are ridiculously low, dangerously low. There's going to be a huge drought, what they call a mega drought in Texas and in the region. And like I said, the web of life, the environment is all connected. What we do, what each one of us do affects everything in the composite when we're all acting together responsibly or irresponsibly. But I wanted to thank you all. Senator Feldman, I really thank you and your office for coordinating, organizing this with my team. Like I said, Andrew was outstanding. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Since your daughter's, I want to thank you for that, but I was going to say, since your daughter is studying state government at Churchill High School, which, by the way, is where my own kids went to high school, you should have her take advantage of, now that we have this relationship, you should have her shadow us when we're back in Annapolis next session. She'll be, at that point, a junior, and it looks good on her resume, and I think she'll enjoy it. And so pass that on to your daughter, okay? Thank you for having us again, and it was great. Fantastic.
Thank you all. Be healthy, be safe. And I like to say this. I do say God bless you, but I also say may the force be with you. Always.
Live long and prosper.
Yes, live long and prosper. What is that, like that? Can you all?
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.